Hey everyone, welcome to a super sunny video. Um, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that is important to people when they're at that mid moment in their life, like mid 40s. And a lot of us in this little niche that we like to do are kind of at that time in our lives. And one of the funny things that happens is that there's a sort of degradation that happens, and a lot of it can be counteracted on if you know how to. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to give you 5 tips where you can kind of feel better or just maybe do something with yourself that gives you an improvement that is related to health. And I'm aiming it at the guys who are in my niche, like the musicians and stuff like that, but really it's applicable to anyone. Let me give you a little background first. I'm actually a physical therapist, orthopedic physical therapist, and I am the owner of Plexus, which is like a fitness and health brand in Italy. And I've been doing physical fitness for about 25 years. That includes teaching people or doing on my own stuff. And I basically helped to rehabilitate a lot of people. And I understand the process of strength training and getting fit quite well. So what I'm going to give you guys are different tips that are basically in that world. If you look on YouTube, you can look at your analytics and you can see who your demographics are. And my demographics are basically men in their mid 40s, well, from 30 to 50 or whatever. But the point is that around that time is when you probably start to lose a little bit of your hair. And typical male pattern baldness is due to a hormonal thing that happens. Basically, you have testosterone, but you also have a form of testosterone that's called dihydrotestosterone. And that binds to hair follicles. And at certain points in your life, when that happens, it'll cause the miniaturization of the hair follicles and you'll start to lose your hair. That is a process that's easily reversible. There are medicines out there that are actually pretty low key that will allow you to counteract that. And the most common used one is called finasteride. In America, the brand name is Propecia. So the point is, though, with a very, very small dose of that, and of course, I'm not a doctor, so listen to your doctor first, you can counteract that. And for most people, it's about getting there early on, meaning that when you start to feel that you're losing hair, that's when you need to start that medicine. If you already have had massive hair loss, it'll still work, but you have to do more to kind of bring things back. And that might include using like microblading and little techniques that basically stimulate the hair follicles. But the point is that if you want more information on this, the best guy is this guy called Derek, more plates, more dates. But again, losing your hair, which was happening to me, I started taking the Propecia and I'm fine, And the point is that it's typical, right? And you can kind of avoid it. But if you don't know that there's a simple fix, maybe you're going to do something radical, like shave your head and then decide you're going to be bald the rest of your life. I don't know. But the point is, it's like, I'm looking out for you guys, okay? All right, so number 2, if you've hurt yourself in your mid 40s, let's say you've like hurt your shoulder or your knee or something like that, and it's like a debilitating injury, you're going to go through a recovery process that's totally different than when you were younger. And especially with some joints, they have a specific time that it takes for them to fix. So let me tell you a kind of crazy story. So last year, I work out, I take care of myself, but I was simply gardening in my garden, and I twisted my knee because I got myself in an odd position. And as I fell, I ripped the ligaments in my knee. And so for nearly 6 months, I was walking around with basically a cane or crutches or something like that. And I was completely debilitated. And again, if you guys start to know me a little bit more as a physical person, you'll understand that that kind of was bad because I couldn't do anything. And that can take an emotional toll on people, a mental health toll. But what I want to walk you guys through is kind of the thing that happens when that happens. When you break something or you hurt yourself in a certain way, whatever you're used to doing doesn't continue to go that way anymore. And that's something that's going to be very hard for you to accept. However, this might be one of the best blessings that you ever had in your life because, look, right around May last year, I tore the fuck out of my knee. And then basically I was like, well, what am I going to do? I love making music. I haven't done anything with music really a lot lately because I've been working on the physical stuff a lot. Let me get back into making music. And look, guys, I made my music YouTube thing about a year ago. And had it not been for basically hurting myself, maybe I just would have gone forward with like more of the physical stuff that I do. And I would have given less time to some of the mental stuff that I do. And the whole last year has been wonderful for me getting back into making music and doing the whole YouTube thing. So again, while you might be suffering from the depression of not being able to continue to do what you know how to do or you're used to doing, sometimes these things can be really helpful in a totally random way. And so I think what I'm trying to give you is like, be kind of positive, even though it's negative, because you don't know where it's going to take you. And often these things take you to places where you never would have gone. And that kind of unexpected return is something that's actually really nice. So I hope that works for you, but that's my tip on that. I'm going to stay in the medical mental health mode for another moment because what I see, especially in America, and I live in Europe, but is a lot of adult onset ADHD. And what I think is really happening there is overdiagnosis or misdiagnosis and overprescription. Without going into super big detail, Ben Jordan made a pretty good video about this, but the point is that if you are suffering from attention deficit disorder or things that have to do with brain fog and lack of concentration, you might not be addressing a lot of the factors that would help you with that initially, and you're going straight to like medicine. And I know probably a lot of you guys have done a lot of the other things too, but what I want to say to you guys about these medicines is that the unfortunate truth is that they work on systems that are kind of like taps. Like you have a dopamine tap, you have also an ephedrine or norepinephrine tap in your brain, and you keep hitting that same tap, you're kind of going to do what happens with also testosterone when men take steroids. And just a little side note, I've never taken steroids because I didn't want to artificially get big and then always have like a problem that I was never as big as I was or whatever. I had weird issues with it. I never wanted to take it. But with these mental health drugs, they work in a similar way. They create an endogenous situation where, inside of your body, you can't really produce it anymore. So you need some exogenous way of getting it. And in the long term, that's not really great. I made a video about the circadian rhythms and more specifically about the ultradian rhythms. If you're lucky as an adult, you're going to have about two 90-minute bursts of concentrated energy in the day, and they're not back to back. So check out that video because I explain this very well. But if you're not understanding these basic principles, you're going to pop a pill, and the pill's going to give you a lot of concentration for sure. I mean, they work really well. But what I'm telling you guys is like, maybe try to do some of the other stuff first. My advice to you is sleep. The sleeping patterns need to be figured out first, and that's going to benefit your awake patterns. So the most important thing, you guys, is to figure out how to get your circadian rhythm in order. And I'll make a video on that. But long story short, let me just give you a quick tip. If you think about caffeine, right, it has a half-life. Half-life is about how long it takes for the actual chemicals to get out of your body, the active ingredient to be less active. Half-life of caffeine is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 hours. So if you have a coffee at 8 in the morning, let's say, right, and most coffees are going to be about 150 milligrams. 8 hours later, you still have 75 milligrams of coffee inside of your body. If you take a coffee then again, at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to stack the 150 on top of that 75. So it's normal that if you have multiple coffees or energy drinks, by the time you're at night, you might have 300 or 400 grams of caffeine inside of your body. And how the hell are you going to fall asleep? So figure out your caffeine, guys. And then once you figure out also the way that you sleep, you won't need as much of these stimulants because you're basically going to be fresh enough to deal with life without them. But again, pro tips, maybe you guys deal with it differently. Mental health is kind of delicate, so just think of it as a friendly nudge as opposed to like some kind of medical advice. All right, tip number 4 is a little bit more abstract. I think if you don't expose yourself to other forms of art, but are concentrating only on music, you're going to kind of be narrow-minded. And one of the things that I think is super important, especially in the summertime, because we allow ourselves a little bit more time, is to open up a book and read. And the reason why that's important is because what reading does that other forms of art don't really do is they create empathy. Because if you are in the mind of the main character when you're reading or whatever, you are actually living the experiences with him or her. And that empathetic thing is a muscle that you have to train as well. Because if you're making music, for example, you want to think about also your listeners, right? You want to think about what your music sounds like to the people who are going to absorb it. And that's empathy. You have to kind of figure those things out. And so those kind of things like empathy and stuff like that are really helpful for musicians because, I mean, come on, this is definitely like a communication that you're having with the public. And so if you learn how to understand their side more, you'll be better at giving them maybe what is not only best for them, but what is best coming out of you because it'll be an expression that is the most connective. Again, these are little tips, and reading might be something that most people kind of, don't love doing. But again, those are muscles, guys. And if you train them, you'll get good at it. And reading can be really fun too, because it's like a escapism in a way, right? And we always like our little escapisms. We like to go into our studio and put on headphones or, tweak a synth and kind of fly away or whatever. It's the same. So I think for some of us who are musically minded like that, reading a little bit would probably do us good. Most people read less than one book a year. That's fucking horrible. And it's a quick fix because, again, just pick up a book, read 20 pages, and all of a sudden you're going to be in a totally different mind state. And that's going to be enough to then go back to the studio, and then you're just different. You have something kind of happening on the side that's kind of bubbling, and that's going to give you different momentum, different things to you guys know how it is. You got to mix it up. That's the point. Mix it up. Otherwise, you're going to be stale, and stale is kind of boring. So just kind of think about keeping it fresh, mix it up, add different forms of art. That's a quick tip, but that's my fourth tip for you guys. And then the fifth tip is kind of like thinking about life in a way that is more maybe spiritual. Now, this is a fucking synth channel, so please don't take me the wrong way. Everyone has their own thing that they like to do. There's been a big rise in people kind of getting back into going to church or being a little bit more religious lately, and people have found spirituality in all sorts of forms. One of the things that I suggest to you is if you're in your mid 40s and you haven't gone down this road, is maybe start to figure out if any of these things sound good to you. Like for me personally, Buddhism kind of works because I feel like it's cosmically aligned with me in a way that I understand. Zen, I have a big yoga background. That whole world of Eastern philosophy connects with me. But if you guys vibe with like any of the things, if you guys are Islamic and you feel like you want to start praying or all the different things, it's super actually beneficial because when you start to take yourself less seriously or redimensionalize yourself, you start to think about things a little bit differently. And when we're in our mid 40s, we can easily get like into these existential kind of feelings where like, what the hell? And my advice to you guys is that there are people who have asked that to themselves and have philosophized on it and have discussed it and commentated and done a lot of work on this stuff. So go look at what other people have kind of thought. And philosophy and religion and spirituality can be a very helpful guide, especially if you've never really gone down that rabbit hole, because it's basically the way that will help you be more calm. I know that sounds kind of like simple, but if you can create a sense of calm and a sense of composure and almost a stoicism, everything that happens around you will happen in a way that you'll react to differently. And that is super important as we get older, that we learn how to be a little bit more mature. And this is something I've definitely been working on, but it's not easy. And a lot of these tips, they're simple tips, but they're not the easiest tips to follow. But what I'm seeing is we are in a relatively small niche, musicians, electronic musicians, guys into synth, stuff like that. But we're all kind of at that same point of our lives. A lot of us are, at least. And I feel that if we can share the things that we learned along the way, we can help each other out. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this video. So I hope that was helpful. If you guys have questions or whatever, leave them in the comments. And yeah, see you guys soon. Peace.